track variants of concern. In the last few weeks, a new Omicron variant has been causing concern in Portugal, the UK, India and South Africa. Now, UAE scientists are using the high-tech process of genome sequencing for early detection, diagnosis and, in the future, control. To explain how it works, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Salih Mahmoud. She's the lab director and clinical pathologist at Biogenix Labs, which is a G42 healthcare company based out of Abu Dhabi. And they have been active during the entire pandemic. How are you, Dr. Mahmoud? Thank you for joining us in the studio.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me today.
It's lovely to have you here. And you know what's so interesting is that we actually met about 2 months into the pandemic when I was fortunate enough to come and visit the lab. And that was when you had just started mass testing and you guys were just warming up to facilitate that. And it was amazing to see the lab and how quickly it had grown and how you were managing to process all those tests. And I think it's quite important to say thank you to you first, because it was that testing that helped us get out of the pandemic. And you ran one of the first labs that did all that testing. So it is amazing to speak to you again and have you in the studio nearly 2 years later.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
We have progressed a lot since then. So we started with the molecular testing or COVID PCRs. And since then, this has developed a lot. We moved into viral sequencing, and that started at the beginning of 2021. And we are actively sequencing every positive case in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. That has helped a lot. Vaccine efficacy studies. We have about 15 clinical trials happening in the country in our lab, and we are helping test the efficacy of these vaccines. And we are helping early detection also of mutations of the COVID-19 virus, and thus, tailoring the vaccines, future vaccines, according to the changes that happen in the virus. So
amazing. I mean, truly amazing work. Really fantastic what you're doing there. Many of us don't really understand how genome sequencing works. Can you give us a bit of an outline about what you actually do when you're doing genome sequencing and how it actually helps with controlling a pandemic or an outbreak?
Of course. So your genome is your DNA. Sequencing will take a look at your DNA structure and identify changes that happen in the DNA, which we call mutations or variants. And thus, this is amino acid. This will lead to amino acid changes or protein changes in the virus and will change the behavior of the virus accordingly. So from gene, it moves to proteins and then to behavior. So what we do is we identify the genetic or the DNA sequence of the virus in detail. So if there is any change of the sequences or the particles that form the DNA, I don't want to get into too much difficult medical terms.
Yeah, because it'll start to go over our head.
So if there is any change, we detect that. And these changes will actually affect also the antibody level or the antibody efficacy, whether from previous infections or previous vaccinations, because the vaccine will produce an antibody that is directed against a certain sequence of protein structure. If that changes, again, the binding of the antibody is not as effective as before. So that's why now there is development in the vaccines to accommodate the new variants, for example, like the Omicron that is currently prevalent, and the focus is to identify the best binding antibody to that protein structure of Omicron.
It's absolutely fascinating because you guys must have so much data from all the testing that's been going on here in this country. I mean, we're one of the most tested populations, and obviously all of that big data is being harvested and used for good. You mentioned there that you're looking at developing new vaccines for COVID-19. Is that something that's happening here in the UAE, or is that something that you're working on as a group with the international scientists?
We are working with international scientists as well as the UAE scientists as well. So this is, I think this is happening everywhere in the world. This is the focus of every pharmaceutical company to provide the best vaccine, the best coverage, the best efficacy vaccine for COVID-19. But we actually, this genome sequencing has moved since the pandemic to a bigger perspective. And I think the pandemic has helped to draw the attention of everyone to diagnostics and to the utility of sequencing. So it's not only used for infectious diseases now, it is used also for clinical genomics or for regular diagnostics, for prevention, for screening, for treatment, and so on. So it's become the target has become much bigger than before, and of course, ambition is much bigger as well.
It must be hugely exciting for someone who's made their professional and clinical career in understanding genome sequencing and promoting it. I mean, I think most of us don't maybe realise that vaccines can be developed, that they can be changed to target these specific COVID-19 variants. Do you think that there'll ever be a sort of overarching vaccine that covers all bases, or is that not possible? Do you think it's going to need to change every year like the flu vaccine?
I think looking at the changes that are happening, the dynamic changes that are happening, this will have to happen. Changes will have to happen. Because there are major changes that happened in the virus since the beginning, from the wild type until the Omicron nowadays. The vaccines that were produced at the beginning are still effective, not as effective as the current vaccines that have been modified to accommodate the Omicron variant, but they are still effective. So it will be there is sort of coverage, but let's say maybe 50%, or according to the type of the vaccine, of course. But since the changes are happening very dynamically, I believe this will have to happen every year. The changes will have to happen every year, like the influenza.
Do you know, I've just remembered that when I came to your lab, Sinopharm had just been introduced widely, just been introduced. And I remember being a bit cynical about it. And you were like, no, it works.
It works.
It works. I've taken it. We've taken it. People have taken it. It works. And that was hugely reassuring to me. I mean, it's an enormous privilege. You don't normally, as a layperson, get to go and speak directly to the scientists who are involved right at the front line of it. But it was wonderful to speak to you and learn those elements. I mean, let's look ahead slightly now, because ultimately, as we've seen, I mean, it's a totally different type of virus, and monkeypox has been around for a very long time. But needless to say, there's heightened public awareness now about any type of virus, any type of contagion that starts to spread around the world. Can genome sequencing stop these pandemics before they begin? Or is that the wrong question to ask? I think it's the wrong question to ask, isn't it?
Well, stopping a pandemic is a bit... there's a lot of aspects here that we need to cover. So early diagnostics, finding a tool for early diagnosis is very important to control any pandemic. And this is what the sequencing can provide. What we do is we can identify any new pathogen through shotgun sequencing. And from there, it can be taken into targeted diagnostics, and then, of course, treatment, and then prevention, development of treatment methods, and prevention with vaccinations. And this has helped a lot control the pandemic here. If you've seen how the healthcare has been stable here, success of the healthcare management in the UAE was all dependent on how successful was the vaccination programs here. And this is all because of the diagnostics. From diagnostics, it moves to prevention.
I mean, what's amazing is how quickly the vaccines were produced for COVID-19. I mean, everyone said maybe by the end of the year, and then there were two well before the end of the year. Do you think that thanks to faster genome sequencing, we could see vaccine production much faster for future viruses, future dangerous viruses?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the pandemic has challenged everyone, from diagnostics to pharmaceutical companies, for fast production kits as well. And the way we have seen it with the monkeypox as well. As soon as the monkeypox started, the kits development was just exaggerated, and we found diagnostic kits available in the market in no time. So before, we used to take a year to just develop one kit. Now it takes a couple of days to develop a kit and put it into commercial operations. So I think this has pushed the healthcare into another level, which is a fast response to pandemics. And we've all been well trained, I think, in the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a sort of hothouse situation over the last 2 years.
Sure.
And so tell me how I mean, this is something we mentioned 2 years ago, but has the UAE invested a lot of money in this type of sequencing, in these types of testing in your labs, ultimately?
Absolutely. It's actually, I feel that it's a leadership vision. Pushing the healthcare into a different level, enhancing the healthcare diagnostics into, higher technology, innovation, creativity, and research. we've had a lot of support from leadership and a lot of pressure to develop very quickly, which actually, as stressful as it was, got us here.
It did. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what amazing. Those sort of intense situations, you'd learned from them ultimately.
Definitely. It was really educational and challenging for sure. But I think the development that happened here over the past 2 years just proves how much support we got and how much interest there is in healthcare diagnostics and support and management.
Can I keep you just for a few more minutes? We've just got to go to a quick break, but there's so many more things I'd like to ask you about, looking ahead, the types of diseases that you can use genome sequencing to target for early diagnostics. And sort of the specific technology that you get to use here in the UAE. We'll just hold you for a few minutes, if that's all right. We are mid-conversation with Dr. Sally Mahmoud, who is the Lab Director and Clinical Pathologist at Biogenix Labs, which is a G42 healthcare company based out of Abu Dhabi. We'll come back to it in just a sec.